Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this?
To bring our clients to a space where we can talk about Microsoft technologies, not looking at the technicalities, but like more trying to talk about the value, the benefits that they get in this space of intranet.
We see there being kind of two groups of people. Either you're in the Microsoft ecosystem and you are looking at the content that Microsoft and associated partners put out into the market, and that content tends to be pretty technical. It can feel a bit impenetrable to begin with. Second group generally tend to be people that don't really like SharePoint, maybe have had bad experiences. What we were trying to do is to create some content for the people that are kind of in the middle of those two groups. We're going to cover things about our own product. If SharePoint is so great, why do things like Fresh exist, right? We want to provide some insight and information on that point as well. Probably my mum and dad might listen to this as well.
Yeah, at least we'll have like two people listening to it, isn't there?
Yeah. Welcome, Jarbas. Good to see you again.
Welcome, David. See you again. It's quite special that you say that, because a few days ago, actually, you were here in Germany.
Yes.
And I had like the opportunity to meet you in person again, which is always nice. So yes, great to see you again.
We had some meat. We had some beers.
Yes, as it belongs to when you come like to Germany, especially like the region of Bavaria. So this is an important thing.
Yeah, it was good. I had a good time.
That's nice. Good to hear.
Is that pleasantries out the way then?
Yes.
Good. Let's get on with it.
Yes, let's start.
Jarbas, welcome to our first official episode, which we're going to do some introductions. We're going to talk about why we're doing this, who we think is going to find this interesting, what we're going to cover in the next few episodes, I guess. And then we're going to do some introductions. We're going to talk about who you are, who I am. Excellent. Why don't you give us an introduction then? Tell us, why are we doing this, Jarbas? What's the purpose of this?
We call, like, first of all, what is this and what is this called? So we started a series. Well, first of all, previously, before we start running this podcast, which is, of course, quite new here, and that's kind of the first introduction round, we had an in-person event, or we still have that, and that's called Fresh Perspectives. And we started that beginning of this year to bring our clients to a space where we can talk about Microsoft technologies, especially in the area, in the space of intranet. Also talk, of course, about our product sometimes, give them a bit of an update on the roadmap, where we're going, get their feedback. But like talk about Microsoft technologies, not looking at the technicalities, right? So not like trying to explain how do you configure, how do you set up something, but like more trying to talk about the value, the benefits that they get from the Microsoft, the vision, the Microsoft 365 services in this space of intranet.
Yeah.
And this is what we want to replicate with this podcast. It's basically recreate this format as a podcast format and talk to our audience about still the same ideas here, talking about Microsoft technologies, looking at the values and benefits, what they can get out of SharePoint when they have maybe to use SharePoint as their intranet, which is the case for many companies. And also sometimes take a look at our product, the things we are doing kind of in Fresh, looking like from the product management point of view, looking at our community. We aim like to bring guests to talk to us from the Microsoft space, from the internal communication space, and also talk a bit about our experience at events. We are very active going at events in the US, in Europe, and give a bit of insights on that as well.
Yeah. I guess that our, one of the reasons that we wanted to kick off that Fresh Perspectives event and this podcast is that, we see there being kind of two groups of people, and the content that comes out of those two groups of people. Either, you're in the Microsoft ecosystem and you are looking at the content that Microsoft and associated partners put out into the market, and that content tends to be pretty technical in nature, right?
Yes.
And if you're not already kind of immersed in that world, the content can feel a bit impenetrable to begin with. It's great value. There's some really good stuff there, but it has a technical edge to it. And Second group that tend to be fairly vocal generally tend to be people that don't really like SharePoint, right? Maybe have had bad experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe there are other reasons for them to dislike SharePoint. Who knows what they could possibly be?
What happened? Yeah.
So what we were trying to do is to create some content, provide some vision, strategy, some insights for the people that are kind of in the middle of those two groups, right? They found themselves in SharePoint, maybe using it for the intranet, maybe planning to use it for the intranet. And what we wanted to do is create a content format of information that's aimed at that group. Perhaps people that have a legacy perspective. If you were a SharePoint user back in sort of 2015, 2016, how you feel about SharePoint might be very different from the reality of using it today.
The platform has evolved a lot, isn't it?
Very much, yes.
Yeah.
And also we think customers of Fresh would find a lot of things that we're going to talk about interesting, useful, valuable, because as you say, we're going to cover things about our own product. If SharePoint is so great, why do things like Fresh exist, right? We want to provide some insight and information on that point as well. And also, I think probably my mum and dad might listen to this as well.
Yeah, at least we'll have like 2 people listening to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good start.
Yeah, exactly right. All right. So then, in terms of, content, things that we're covering, you talked about SharePoint intranets. We're going to do challenges. We want to do the good and bad. We are a Microsoft partner. So we are by nature pro Microsoft.
Yes.
So, if you're looking for a kind of independent review of SharePoint and Microsoft, this may not be the format for that. But, we do have an edge of realism about what we do, right? We've both had extensive experience, many years working in the Microsoft ecosystem, right?
Directly building on top of Microsoft 365 and also integrating with Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
Coming like from a third party, integrating with the platform. So I think we have a bit of understanding, and we're also like talking to people outside of Microsoft space, getting their feedback. Which also help us get back like to the reality sometimes, like the reality of people who are coming like from maybe a third-party solution or are coming from outside of like the Microsoft 365 space, and now suddenly have like to use SharePoint, or they like maybe have been using a third-party solution now want to use SharePoint as the intranet, and then the feedback we get. So I think it's trying like to also considering that, especially when we talk about challenges in SharePoint.
Yeah. And, for people that are just maybe dealing with a mess as well, right? Microsoft 365 is a huge product. It does a lot of things. SharePoint is a very broad product. It does a lot of things. And, it can be easy to get into a bit of a mess in a platform and a set of services maybe where there isn't, or there hasn't been enough governance or structure, and the thing is just evolving in a sort of fairly unmanaged way. That can create a very difficult situation for people to manage. So we want to address all those challenges.
Right, and along like on talking about the challenges, what are the topics we also want to cover?
Yeah, so primarily we're going to talk about why we think SharePoint is a good platform for intranets. And then, once you've established that good platform within SharePoint, where do you go next? How do you break beyond, out of the box? Where can you evolve this solution to? How do you deal with user demand and feedback? We're going to talk to some customers that are kind of having success with SharePoint. As you said, Jarbas, we're going to talk to some thought leaders, people in the community who have other customers and experiences in delivering success with SharePoint. We're going to talk about things that we've been discussing at events as well, aren't we?
Definitely. Yeah, we have been actually not just joining events as a sponsor or attendees. We have also been speaking about different topics, and we all want to do some reflection on that and how those topics have evolved over like the months that we have been actively delivering kind of these sessions, let's say AI or Viva. Yeah.
And, there's been kind of both positive and negative reactions to a lot of that content. So we're going to talk about all of those things. We're going to cover kind of features in Fresh that we are planning, that we're working on. We're going to talk about why we've built them, how we've built them. We're going to cover
how we build them, which I think is quite interesting as well. Like I have like been working on this space of product development for many years now, product management, and I think it's nice to share that with our customers also who will like be listening to this podcast.
Yeah, we have a pretty good customer insight program where we get feedback and insight and information from customers on features that we're planning. So we're gonna talk about all of those things.
Sounds very interesting. Now, before we get there, maybe we can do a short introduction, about who you are, who I am, and I would suggest you start, David.
Me?
Yes.
All right, then.
We don't have that many options.
Sure. Okay. All right. Sure. Well, look, I think, we've already talked about the fact that we've both got a lot of experience in Microsoft's and the Microsoft partner ecosystem. I found Microsoft with ASP was kind of my first introduction to Microsoft as a developer, and I was building websites. I can't even remember the year that I started on that. So that's probably fortunate for hiding my age in this first episode. And then, kind of natural evolution into ASP.NET. I was working in digital agencies in places where Microsoft wasn't a popular choice of technology to use. So much so, in fact, that many people in that agency used to refer to me as Bill Gates. That was my sort of affectionate nickname in the agency.
Good to know.
And what I discovered is that I like the people bit of my job more than I like the actual coding. Right? I think on reflection, I was probably a really bad developer. But I really enjoyed the people bits, right? Gathering requirements, the playback, watching people's reactions, getting, feedback and additional suggestions for things. How do we make this better? How do we fix more problems? That was the bit that I really enjoyed. And then moved into what was content and code in the kind of in the 2000s, which, really felt like I found a home for the things that I like doing. I saw a lot of kind of similarities in the objectives of that business. There was a real kind of growth mindset in that organization. And Tim Wallace, who was the CEO of Content and Code, was a huge influence on me at a kind of formative time. And then tracking, I was moving from professional services into product, right? Setting Fresh up out of the IP that we were constantly using. In our SharePoint projects as content and code, we decided, look, we think there's a product in here. And at about that time, we saw some of these amazing looking SaaS intranet vendors that were turning up in our bids. And it seemed like a natural progression for us as an organization to go from just services to having this product. So from quite humble beginnings, we grew Fresh, found some customers, got some more feedback, attached some people to it, and, really, I guess, as they say, the rest is history.
Right. And I think it's, as you mentioned, it's a natural evolution that when we are delivering internet projects, at some point to just observe that the requirements of the clients, they're not as unique as the clients sometimes think they are.
We were running extensive design workshops and activities, and often what we saw really was the same or similar outcomes, at least, coming from those workshops. And, where the kind of unique requirements were coming from weren't necessarily on writing more code. It was on how do we get the right experience with this functionality for our end users, right? That kind of, how do we get maximum adoption? How do we position the content in this system? How do we manage it? How do we feed and grow this thing? Rather than how do we build more advanced functionality? That was the role that we could provide as the technology specialists. The real value in that work was how do we make sure that the maximum number of people see the information and content in this thing?
Cool. That's nice.
And Jarbas, tell us, do the same then. Tell us about you.
Of course. Look, I have been working, first of all, I have always worked in Microsoft space, either building directly on top of Microsoft, at the beginning, Microsoft SharePoint on premises. And as soon as I had the opportunity, then we've worked with now what's called like Microsoft 365, SharePoint Online. So always like either building directly on top of the Microsoft platform or integrating with the Microsoft platform. So as what I mentioned before, so working for someone kind of a company building internet solution outside of SharePoint and then integrating with then the Microsoft 365 platform. Both ways, either bringing data into Microsoft 365 or the other way around, kind of bring the Microsoft data into the platform. So that has been my focus. I started as a developer, similar as you. So I started writing code, and I did that like for around 10 years, 9 years. And at some point, I got the opportunity to manage one of the products I was working as a developer. And it was a tough decision, like do you want kind of to stop everything that you have done so far, kind of the knowledge? It's a lot of investment, right? So if you're a dedicated person who want kind of to really understand what does coding mean and how can I do that better, so it's a lot of time that you invest there. So I thought about it, but I thought, hey, I think maybe it's like the next step, and maybe I can influence the product in a different way, and I accepted that. So then I became a product manager, and I have been working as a product manager since then. A good part of this time was building internet solutions, or integrating with internet solutions, and I think that's more or less that.
You're also an MVP, Jarbas. As a Microsoft partner, this is the term that we throw around quite a lot. We've got 10 MVPs, we've got 20 MVPs. Unless you're in the kind of, again, if you aren't in the Microsoft ecosystem, what does this mean? Is it a Microsoft MVP? Is it an MVP? What is the term? What does it mean?
Yeah, like the minimal viable product, no?
Yeah.
And there is something that I heard from another MVP in this field who was like working in consultancy. So they came to a client to talk to them, and they said, no, we're going to send an MVP to talk to you. And the client said, hey, no thanks, but we want to talk to a professional, right? Because with that thing in mind, that an MVP is the minimal viable product. So and it's nothing related to sports. So it's not like kind of the most valuable player. It's the most valuable professional. It's an award that you get from Microsoft for your active.
So Microsoft most valued professional.
Yes, exactly. So it's an award that you get from Microsoft for your contributions in the community, which means helping promote Microsoft services, helping the community, answering questions in forums, helping improve Microsoft services with feedback. So sometimes you get invited to give feedback on things that Microsoft are working on, early stage still. So you are invited to try it out, give your feedback, help improve it before, let's say, the Microsoft clients, customers get that. Which is of course also very helpful when you are building on top of platform. But that's more or less kind of the idea. Yeah.
This is something that you personally have to apply for every year.
Yes. So first of all, you get nominated at some point, right? So that is how all of that starts. You have been active, someone noticed that, and then they'll nominate you, and you might end up becoming an MVP. So this now, to maintain the MVP status, you need to continue active in the community, speaking, contributing, writing blog posts, and so on. And every year you get kind of reevaluated. So it means it's a lot of, I would say, effort and work that we put there, kind of also in the private time. Yeah. But it also means, I think, that we try to stay on top of the technology. And I think we do that as a passion, right? So we like the platform. As I said, so I have always been working with Microsoft. Before I worked with Microsoft technologies, I use Microsoft technologies. And I for me, it's really a bit of a passion to be in this space.
So the kind of benefit to customers, I think, particularly for those that aren't necessarily in the Microsoft world, is that, it's almost assurance, right? That the person that they're speaking to has the latest information, that they are keeping themselves up to date. This is an award that you've got to apply for on a yearly basis. So if you're letting your kind of skills and knowledge slip, you're not going to get awarded in a subsequent year, because you've got to demonstrate that you're keeping up and publishing content. Yes. And you have a kind of a public persona that you must be maintaining that is based on having the latest information from Microsoft.
It is, and it's visible to everyone, all of the things you do, right? So these sessions you deliver, talking about Microsoft topics. A lot of study goes also in this space, to, as you mentioned, to stay up to date. Yeah. things, of course, we do sometimes as part of the work, depending on the type of task you have, but also then outside of the work, when you want like to specialize or focus on a specific area, let's say Microsoft Viva or Copilot now, which is also very interesting and timely. One thing maybe to mention before, what's your role at Advania, David?
That's a good question, and I probably should have answered that in my intro. So I'm the product director for Fresh, so I am responsible for the product, the services, the proposition, the go-to-market, the marketing. I guess in customer conversations, the way that I tend to describe myself is when things are going well, it's because the team are doing an amazing job. Whenever there's a problem, it is generally my fault.
It's you're right. Yeah.
And
saying that
Jarbas,
because I'm
what's your
part
role?
of the team. I'm a senior product manager at Fresh, so I'm working at Advania, so like you, and I help the team with the commercial and technical aspects of the product business. So working closely with our marketing team, with our sales team, but also working closely with the product team, helping build the roadmap, especially like the high level items. Trying like to understand what is the value of including some features in the product, being challenged by the team as well. So that's my role here at Fresh.
Marvelous. Cheers, Jarbas.
Cheers.